Hello, Jerry and I welcome you to Soulprint Intuitive Tarot. I always know when Jerry feels that it's time to visit you guys because as I prepare to record these little videos of mine, he just sits in this chair and he won't move because he just, I guess, feels it's very important. He thinks he's doing a public service, and so we're not going to discourage the grumpy little fella, huh? No smiles today? Yeah, I know, but you have to stay off my chair. You can come back when I'm done, okay? Look alive and say goodbye. Bye. Done you get. Good boy. Hello, hello. Okay. So what are we going to take a look at today? By the way, this is for August 5th. And, yesterday they were those little clips of the interview he had Trump had done with Swan. I can't remember his first name, Jonathan Swan. And some of the real gems, of course, out of his mouth were, he didn't need to go to the funeral of John Lewis, although frankly, I think it's a blessing he didn't go. However, that he didn't need to go because John Lewis didn't come to his inauguration. So there's that. When asked about all of the people who have lost their lives and have been, really, really sick and may never fully recover from, lung damage, etc., his reply was, well, it is what it is. It is. That's true. What it is that you're a really bad president. Oh, and of course, after throwing Dr. Bricks under the bus, he then issued something that saying, no, I love her and everything's fine and she's wonderful. So again, so this is interesting, right? Because it feels like in some ways, some people, they're finally gotten through to him, and when he doubles down on something that's not in his best interest, they seem to have been able to figure out a way sort of to at least get him to backtrack in a way that I suppose he doesn't feel is backtracking. I'm guessing. And they've also announced a bunch of out-of-state fundraiser type events for him because they need to get him out of the White House. They need to perk up his ego, et cetera, et cetera. So, that's what we have. Okay, I want to take a look today at sort of how voters are feeling across the spectrum. So, I think I might break this down into 3 sort of like mini readings, and let's just see if we can get a handle on what is going out there in the United States as people are starting, people are starting to realize that who have not been focused on that the election is coming up, and they need to start paying a little bit of attention to that in addition to everything else. So this is the thing, right? He is now behind, all the different things that you either approve of him or disapprove of him. So for a while there, the only thing that he was sort of holding him upright was people really liked the way he was dealing with the economy. I don't understand it myself, but some people seem to think he was just doing a great job. But, as far as, race relations, as far as the coronavirus, as far as just being like a functioning human being, he was way behind on all the polls. Well, and now I think Biden and him in terms of approval for handling the economy are sort of neck and neck. I mean, maybe people are starting to realize that in 2008, when they, went into the White House, when he went in with Obama, there were some real scary financial concerns going on. And somehow that got corrected, right? He was instrumental in lifting that up and, setting the country back on a road to recovery. So it's interesting that it's taken some people sort of that long to figure out that he actually might know what he's doing. Okay, so let's take a look. We're going to start with the Democrats. So come on down. I have a question. All right, here we go. So, Democrats, current election. Democrats, current election. Democrats, current election. And of course, I'm specifically referring to the presidential election. Okay. So this really does tell sort of an interesting story. So the Three of Cups sitting here, of course, is talking about, the celebrations, the success of this next election and how they want it to go and, the celebrations surrounding that. Okay. Now, these two cards are interesting because both the Five of Cups and the Eight of Cups are both sort of talking about, cards of regret, of disappointment, of sadness. And it's talking about leaving, right? So this is literally telling me what Democratic voters have really been coping with and dealing with for the last, 4 years, certainly 3.5 years since the actual election last year. There's a profound sense that the country really, really took a wrong turn. There is a feeling that things that are lost may never be recovered. There is a feeling that he actually has tricks up his sleeve that would prevent him from having to leave office. Now, again, I think that when people are looking forward to, they're anticipating, right? They're anticipating the departure, but there's a lot of emotions wrapped up in if that's going to happen, how that's going to happen, what that's going to look like. And part of what that does is just sort of stir up kind of that sense of agitation. There really needs to be a focus and a concentration on the fact that, stick to the positive messages, stick to the things that make sense. This is all about communications, and it's about communicating in a clear and forceful way. So, and again, you've got so much going on. You've got the Lincoln Project and all the other ones, because there's like 4 or 5 or 6 of them anyways, who were all like Republican based, who were saying, this guy's got to go, right? I mean, he's just like flat dangerous. So focus on the positive, focus on the communications that promote what you are looking for. And again, remember, you're focusing on welcoming somebody in and not removing somebody. So it has been a hard journey. And one of the things that has been learned, and not just by Democrats, but by everybody, is that one, this is going to be a big job. This is going to be a lift. So you can't surrender your energy kind of thing, right? You have to stay focused. You have to stay on top of this. It is really, to whatever degree you're comfortable with. I mean, for goodness sakes, don't, put your physical or mental health in jeopardy. But there's a realization that it's going to be big work to correct this, because you know what? It's not only about getting Biden into the White House. It is about all the things that need to be fixed and corrected once he gets in there, and all the work, frankly, that needs to go on between now and the election day. How people are going to vote and what that's going to look like is still being determined and decided in a lot of different places. Make sure that you check your registration, and not once, but I'm going to suggest a couple of times between now and, I guess the end of October, to make sure that you're actually registered, because there's a lot of stuff going on with that. And part of, And the other thing this card is literally representing is the fact that you need to be very selective about what you take inside of yourself as truth or as accuracy. The Russians are not going to back off. And so really the solution is to get to a place where you can recognize it, realize it, block it. Do not fall into the story and the spin. So, and these cards are now lovely, right? As you know, my Ace of Swords very often, not always, but very often represents Joe Biden. And so you have the Nine of Pentacles here, which, you know, is about votes, right? It's about having more votes than the other guy. It's about the success and the happiness is going to come as a result of that. That is the future you are envisioning. That is your focus. Do not focus on what you do not want. Focus on what you do want and how that's going to look and what you can do to contribute to the result you're ultimately looking for. So, and you know, the High Priestess is talking about recognizing the truth of what has taken place, recognizing how the situation ended up where the situation ended up in terms of Trump, and the clarity and understanding that goes with understanding it is also, of course, what helps you to ensure that that is sort of like not repeated, if you will. The world is watching. The world supports you. The world is doing everything they can do to ensure that judgment is passed, the correct voices are heard, and that the judgment that is passed ultimately ends up creating a happier and more peaceful and more tranquil presidency than the one that has been experienced, so that really important stuff can get done. There's going to be a lot of happiness among Democrats as this sort of continues to unfold, and certainly once the results are in. Yeah. So again, you know, this, as you know, the Fool card is often my trump card. And look, he has the 10 of Wands sitting right beside him, following, right, the judgment. Okay, so judgment on the Fool, and understanding that the burden he carries is so significant that it's really, really going to be eye-opening, I guess, at how strong the Democratic response is to have someone new come in and take that place, specifically the Joe Biden. Okay, so let's take a look at independence. I think overall, I mean, energetically, when you kind of look at this, it's interesting because the energy around it is some people are super excited. They love Uncle Joe. They can't wait for him to get in office, etc. They really feel that that's moving the country, you know, in a direction that they can get behind. Now, there are some people who don't like Joe Biden, but they're going to vote for him because, you know, the alternative is completely beyond tolerance, right? Just can't. So let's take a look at independence. They're the swing voter, right? You know, they're sort of not committed to one party for any sort of longevity, right? They swing depending on who the person is, what the issues are, etc. So this is a really, really powerful group because they swung, not all of them, lots of them didn't, but enough of them, I guess you could say, swung hard for Trump, or even softly for Trump, but it was enough to get him the Electoral College win, which stuck him in that White House. So let's take a look at the independents. Independents, current election, independents, current election, independents, current election. What does this look like, do we think? Yeah. So there are more independents swinging left than staying right, okay? And what part of, I almost want to say like the calculation, if you will, that a lot of independent voters are making is what is going to move this country forward in the best possible way? And how do we hang on to whatever it is that is left and salvageable? Because there has been so much that has gone on, and that really seems to be what's motivating them. It is a matter of, listen, so much has been destroyed. We better grab on to what hasn't been completely ruined by this guy, and see what we can do to kind of get this situation corrected so that we can move forward. I also think, and this is across the board, for people who, for example, really, really didn't want the Affordable Care Act expanded because they didn't want to lose their insurance through their employer. If the pandemic has taught or indicated or shown anything, it has shown that if you don't have your job, you don't have your coverage. And so all of a sudden, that sort of universal health care starts to feel much more attractive. Those are some of the things that are being sort of processed by the independent voter. They really feel as if they it's like they have no choice but come out in huge numbers to get the government flip happening, because there's a recognition that could actually really, really significantly damage the country. And they feel that they really need to do what they need to do to charge ahead, get things sorted out in such a way so that there is some stability that comes back, and that situations that have gone on, particularly with the pandemic, have really, really impacted a lot of people, emotionally, physically, mentally. They are suffering with ongoing illness, or there's been, death in their families or their friends. A lot of the independents just have had enough. They can't take anymore. They don't want to listen to him anymore. It was like, it's like a song that plays over and over and over again, and you might really like that song, and it might get you snapping your fingers and everything's all good. But when you hear it the 200th time and the 400th time, it stops being quite so uplifting. And so they've heard about all they care to hear from this man. And they really are quite determined to course correct whatever they can do to ensure that what happened in 2016 does not happen in 2020. They are completely on board with that, and they're strong. Those independents are not, certainly in this election, they're not quite as flexible as they might have been if things had not been so cruel and chaotic and incomprehensible. So it looks like they're dug in. Yeah, they just want to take what happened, and they want to do everything they can to get this situation course corrected so it can move forward in a more positive way. In some ways, they are almost it's sort of like they look at what they gained and they look at what they've lost, and there is no balance. So there really is that sense that we need to fix this, and we're going to do what we need to do to literally get ourselves out of basically the, sort of the prison that has been created in the United States, whether that is because of COVID, whether that is because of economics, whether that is because other countries really don't want you crossing into their border space, whether it's because you're just sick and tired of being humiliated by this guy. So let's take a look now. We're going to take a look at the Republicans, and I'm going to sort of combine those that really have pulled away from him versus those who are still sticking like glue. And remember, those who are still sticking like glue, their numbers are, their approval numbers, they approve. They're putting, by their very, really staunch commitment to him, they are really putting other Republicans in a place where they really honestly don't have a lot of wiggle room. Even though the likes of Mitch McConnell has let Republicans know that you basically need to do whatever you need to do now to save your job. And if that means separating from, pulling away a little bit from Trump, that's what you need to do. So let's do it this way. Election, never Trumpers, always Trumpers. Election, never Trumpers, always Trumpers. Election, never Trumpers, always Trumpers. Let's see. Okay. They're starting to recognize, they're starting to understand. So you have the never Trumpers who got it. They got it before the guy was elected, and they continue to get it, and their numbers are increasing. And just because in some areas, it doesn't look quite as powerful or as strong, and it's not going to be. It's not going to be, your country is not going to turn like solid blue. But there's definitely a sense that, this really might not work anymore. This presidency could very much be over. The people who really want him to stay in office, the rest of them are really determined to bring him down. And frankly, honestly, they're the ones that seem to have a little bit more power and a little bit more momentum. You have to understand that a lot of the people who really, really support him do it for a variety of reasons. You have some groups who literally thought that he was going to bring on a race war, which would bring along the rapture. There were some people who were looking at it, from the perspective of, if I own a business, this could be helpful to me. But most people look at him as a entertaining reality show guy. And what is boggling to the rest of us is sort of why they would want that kind of a person leading their country at a time of upheavals all around the world. But there's a real disconnect. So a lot of stuff that they are not getting from wherever they get their news from, they're simply in a lot of ways unaware. And so a lot of the never Republicans are actually, in some ways, they're targeting the Republicans to say, come on, you guys, take a good objective look at what is going on, and how in any way does this even sound like what the Republican Party is supposed to stand for. Some are simply going to listen to the messaging, and that's all there is to it. It's just as simple as that. But what you need to understand is that for them, they don't understand how much interference is going on, because there is that sort of mentality of, well, whatever it takes to get my guy in is just fine. And that sort of literally, I'm sorry, but that kind of a double standard really, really needs to be addressed going forward in your country. It's supposed to be at least a level playing field. So this attitude of, that was wrong for you to do, but it's perfectly acceptable for us to do, that really needs to start getting drowned out. It needs water poured on it. So that kind of thinking just starts to move away. That's what creates those strong partisan energies. And ultimately, a lot of those people, even the ones who continue to support him, are understanding that a lot of the stuff that he has offered or said he was going to do or offer, that actually did not come to pass. What they do see is a bunch of promises or statements or ideas. And for some, it plays right into the sort of, white superiority or white privilege, or just the whole fear of you look different than me, or you have different values or traditions than me, and so I'm not going to be inclusive and let you in, okay? But there's definitely a sense that he really has not come through. And more, as the next, I want to say 60 days unfold, that is where his support is really strong in that sort of central part of the United States. That is where you're going to start seeing a real uptick in virus activity. And so day by day, just like the people in those southern states, they've come to realize that, this guy isn't doing anything for us, and he is endangering us. And now that we are in this place where our very lives are endangered, our financial stability is destroyed, we don't even know if there's a roof over our head, he could not care less. And his government just wants to strip whatever protection is out there for us. So it's going to get harder and harder for some of those really staunch Republicans to continue to hang on to what they think is important and what they see going ahead. The sun, okay, the illumination of what it is that they will not see, is going to, in some ways, almost really open the eyes of some whose eyes have been closed. And for the never Trumpers, they are ultimately going to see that they will be successful in bringing this to a stop and bringing this presidency to a stop. Because, you know what? It's, death to the fool, right? And I don't mean that literally. So, I guess I want to say that for the real staunch Republicans, they're going to have a little bit of a harder time. They're going to have been primed to believe that the election results can't be trusted and they're tainted, even though this nonsense that has been spewing out of Trump's mouth and those around him about it not being safe to vote by mail, even though there is absolutely nothing that suggests that's even slightly remotely true. But what's happening is in some areas, you're finding that the very voters that he needs to come out and vote for him in person, they really, but they normally would vote for him by mail. Now they're getting scared that either way their vote isn't going to be, counted. If they do it by mail, he's promising them that, it's not going to be counted and it's a hoax and it's that. But if they go to vote in person, well, that puts them in a position where they're literally risking their health for somebody who doesn't care what their health is about. So, I think the loss is going to be hard for some Republicans, but I have to tell you that overall, for me, the energy I'm receiving, what I am seeing, it really doesn't look like there's going to be a whole lot of pushback when he loses. I know, he talks about rioting in the streets and whatever. I don't see it. I mean, sure, could there be a little bit? Of course there could. But do I see it sort of having the power and the impact as, for example, the Women's March, right, the day after he was inaugurated? It's not even going to come close. Not even a teeny bit. So again, keep your focus on a positive transition of power. Keep your focus on welcoming into the people's house, your White House, that which is going to bring about the kind of changes, etc., that that need to take place. So I hope you found that helpful, insightful, right? I'll see you again soon. Until next time, take care. Be well. Bye-bye now.